back to For the Love of Men podcast. My name is Courtney Shand, and I'm hosting with my dear friend, Brianna Mosier.
Hello.
The intention of the show is to bring together men and women to create harmonious, healthy, polarized relationships by learning how to honor each other's natural masculine and feminine energetic core.
Yes.
So before we dive in, we've got a really juicy episode for you today. But before we dive in, I want to introduce you to my friend Bri, because she's amazing.
Thank you.
Tell my new friends why you are so amazing. What do you do?
Why I'm so amazing.
Well, you are just amazing.
Boy.
What do you do that
What do
they
I
would be
do?
interested in knowing about?
I help really ambitious, driven women both scale their soul-led businesses and attract in healthy love from empowered masculine men. And the modality within which I do that is very somatic based. So I work a lot with reconnecting women to their bodies, their pleasure, sexual intimacy, and really embracing their feminine energy so they can create healthy dynamics both in their business and in their relationships.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And Courtney,
Beautiful.
similar work but different.
Yep.
Tell the
Also
people.
very somatically based. I am a relationship mentor. I really specialize in helping women let go of previous patterns that they have inherited that keep them stuck in unfulfilling dynamics, not fully revealing who they are so that the right partner can find them. And this will show up in how they treat their body, the relationship that they have with their body, their health, their food. But most enjoyable for me currently is talking about the dating dynamics. I love helping women with that.
I love that.
Yep.
So good. What do we have on the docket today?
Gosh, this one is amazing. So, TikTok family, this won't be news to you because we put out a stitchable TikTok, probably a couple months ago, asking men what they needed in order to feel safe to open up emotionally. We got thousands, tens of thousands.
Literally
I think we're at
10,000
comments.
Not even looking at stitches
No.
or duets.
No,
Hundreds, probably thousands of those too, actually.
I would say
We could not keep up.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
we're appreciative of that response.
So grateful.
Yes.
An influx of information. We combed through it to the best of our ability and got some of the patterns that we noticed that men were sharing of what comes up for them when they're thinking about revealing more emotionally or what they would need in order to reveal more emotionally. So we are going to talk about some things that just need to be talked about for either party who's wanting to enter into more emotional depth.
Yeah, and I think this episode will talk a lot about maybe how relating to emotions and emotional intimacy can differ between masculine and feminine, and a little bit of how you can help those limiting beliefs soften. But we do have a surprise for you. If you love this episode, we have created a resource that will be live. If you want to dive deep into creating emotional intimacy and emotional safety in either your current relationship or future relationships, you're going to want this. And Courtney and I are going to tell you all about it at the end of the episode.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yes. So you want to go ahead and dive in?
Yeah, sure.
Awesome.
Okay, so the biggest, we've noticed both in our work and in the responses that we got from men was there's a lot of socialization around emotions, particularly for men, but also for women, and we'll touch on that, and what it means to be a quote-unquote man and how they relate to their emotions because of that. And so a lot of the men in their responses told us that expressing their emotions, feeling their emotions, made them feel weak. That's what I understood, is they had learned societally and socially that it made them less of a man, if you will. And if you've been listening to the show for a while, you know Courtney and I will live and die by this sword, that an empowered masculine man is integrated with his feminine energy. Go back to episodes 4 and 5 if you want to know exactly what we mean by those things. He's integrated with his emotions. You can't really even be in your empowered masculine state if you're not honoring and engaging with, interacting with, honoring your emotions. And a lot of, also, sidebar, a lot of people who identify in the feminine pole or women are really wanting this from their masculine partners. Emotional safety and intimacy And I think it's such an important conversation to have. So we really want to help you change the narrative about what it means to be in your empowered masculinity. For us, we believe that means honoring your emotions and being with them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that you said that, because this starts at home. Mm-hmm. You will notice this dynamic playing out internally and then externally as well. Mm-hmm. So we want to break this down so that you have some awareness, some language to use when you're noticing, like, hey, I do this thing to myself where, you know, I stop myself from crying, or I stop myself from being X, Y, and Z. Here's some language that we've learned that might be supportive to you in that moment.
Yeah, exactly. So a lot of the men told us that they felt like it makes them less of a man, it makes them weak, it makes them not tough. That was a big portion of the response, right? Was this socialization around how they interact with their emotions, and that to be masculine meant to be detached from their emotions. So that seemed like one of the pitfalls that came up immediately. What was another one that came up that you noticed?
Yeah. I did hear a lot of language around emotions being weaponized, where it's used against them. That phrase was probably like 80% of men did acknowledge that was a very lived experience for them, and we just want to honor that. And I think, just to shed a little bit of light on it, from my understanding, is sometimes this can come from a unhealthy emotional exchange between mom and dad that plays out in child. Becomes mom and child, where now emotions feel, or whatever the initial female caregiver, or feminine energy in the house was, now feels somehow merged. So it's not like they're having a very clear view of emotions where they can approach it in a way that feels safe to them. It's either like all or nothing. And so in that way, they're kind of having a hard time regulating themselves, and then emotions are being used against them kind of in a manipulative way, and it causes further distrust of emotions in general. And so it's just easier to not have that experience at all, than to be either trying to regulate yourself with someone else and or having it used against you in a way that is not honoring for your experience.
I love that you brought that up, because it is so significant how the feminine in your household handled, showed, expressed her emotions. Usually our caregiver's self-talk becomes our self-talk. This is actually, can we pause on that? Because that's such a big thing to recognize.
100%. Yeah. Yes. We are only building on where our caregivers brought us to. Their level of emotional intelligence and intimacy is our set point, our starting line, and we are coming in to raise the bar. So I'm so glad you said that, because we can't use what we don't have.
It truly, 100%. And to give more context, at least for me, being in the coaching industry, which is pretty young, by the way, I feel like the coaching industry was not this booming 10 years ago. Now it feels really lush and vital, if you will. But those same resources were not available when the generation before us was raising kids. So if we're looking at, baby boomer generation, this is where a lot of that socialization around masculinity and emotions and what it means to feel your emotions was created. And there's no shame on that generation or what happened. Again, everyone's doing the best they can with what they know. And my future kids, our future kids, the next generation will probably look back. I hope they look back and go, Mom, this shit, you messed this up, right? I hope they learn more than me and take it further than me.
Yeah.
So it's not to throw any shade on that generation or shame them, but things were very discipline focused, right? It was about control. It was about be a good girl. It was about be presentable. It was don't feel that makes you weak. There was a lot of spanking in the culture. There's a ton of not cultural, but societal things happening that were influencing that. Discipline versus now we're seeing a lot more gentle parenting come about. And that fosters deeper emotional intelligence. But what a lot of us learned and were socialized to do was swallow your emotions. It makes you too much. It makes you weak. It makes you less of a man. It makes you dramatic. It makes you whatever. Because our caregivers didn't have the skill set to handle those emotions. Instead, and they didn't have the awareness, right? To say, I'm having having a hard time with your big emotions. What they said was, don't cry.
Put that away.
Put that away. It's making me uncomfortable. That's really what was happening. I don't know how to handle my own emotions, so don't come to me with yours. Get that together.
Yeah.
You're being too much for me, my system, which is accurate. It was too much for their system.
100%.
There was a skill set that was lacked in a lot of, at least from my interpretation, in a lot of that generation. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, just thinking about it in terms of like culturally what was happening, all of their dads were returning from war. And they were being drafted for war. You know, like the boomers, that's what was happening. So like there's not a lot of room for emotion when you're in deeply traumatic, action-oriented spaces. And so now we have the luxury of not having active drafts or active war right now, and being able to be in a more feminine or more emotional space. Now we have the room to say, hey, actually I don't have the skill set because it was too triggering to even have the conversation about. You would get triggered and therefore the whole thing shut down. And what I learned in my nervous system as a child is, oh, we don't talk about that. And now I never grow the skill set because we don't talk about that. I've heard so many of my clients who are in the boomer generation say that we just don't talk about that. We never talked about that. And how are we supposed to learn if we don't talk about it? So that's really what I wanted this whole episode to be about. Like, let's just talk about it.
Yes.
Let's call a spade so that we can keep moving forward.
You brought up such a good point when you talk about men in their experience at that time. And think about the counter for women is fighting for their rights.
Oh, yeah.
So a lot of this like masculinization of women, that's what people call it, from my understanding has come from women not having rights and having to fight for them, right? Not having equal rights in terms of their careers. Women were just entering the workplace for the first time. Women were just having rights with their reproductive systems, with their bodies, sexuality, all sorts of things. And that fight for women's rights was rising in those generations that our parents were raised in, and then at the tail end, right? And I'm speaking from my own, I'm obviously giving my age away, but I don't care. And so a lot of those women come from moms who grew up in that generation. Naturally, your mom's going to be more closed off because if emotions are socialized to make you appear weak, and to be vulnerable is not available in that moment when you're trying to be seen as equal and be respected and be heard. So women had to put on this like, I've got me because we need to fight to be equal. I can't show these vulnerable parts of me right now. I need to go march for women's rights, right? And there's this general idea that women are too dramatic, they're too much. And so, of course, if that is kind of like what painted as a kink in the armor, then you're going to do everything you can to like not show that kink. Nope, we're put together, right? So now you have generations of mothers who don't realize what's happening and then passing it down and never reconnecting with their emotion. Does that make sense?
Such a great point. I was thinking, it's funny that you went more politically because I was still thinking in the war track of when the men leave the house, the women have to be both masculine and feminine now. And that's what the child is trying to regulate with. They no longer have an equal masculine and feminine partner taking equal loads with their natural pole. Now she is carrying the weight of the household and working outside the house and regulating the children. So there's not a lot of emotional availability. She just didn't have bandwidth for that because it was required. Masculine energy at home, masculine energy at work, masculine energy trying to prove that I'm equally capable of having this job. And I'm supposed to be pouring into the emotional development of this little human.
My God, did women do the best they could. And men.
And men. I mean, it was we had a lot going on. So all that to say, if this is news, you know, two generations down, we're not that far removed.
100%. 100%. Yeah.
And we weren't talking about this 20 years ago. I mean, it was not as mainstream to talk about emotional intelligence. It was kind of like a niched thing. Even just in my adult awareness.
Feels like such a new thing.
Yeah.
Truly.
Yeah.
Like gentle parenting. This is the first time I've ever heard this concept is in the last 2 to 3 years.
Interesting.
I don't know if that was... Did you know about that?
Is that like nonviolent?
It's basically like an example of it would be if your child was having a temper tantrum, you're sitting with your child and saying, oh, you're having some really big emotions right now.
Narrating.
Yeah. Do you want a hug? How are you feeling? Like, you're just present with them in those emotions, right? And when I went to school, when I was getting my degree, I had a minor in child development, and we never spoke about gentle parenting. Was not a thing.
Right. Yep. Same.
I'm just like, oh my God, are these kids going to supersede us because of
hopefully
in their emotional intelligence? But so
amazing.
And I feel like, so I want to say one more thing. Okay. The work that you and I do in terms of helping everyone integrate their feminine energy, because remember, it's not about gender, it's energy, as we've said so many times, can feel pretty edgy because we're not this far removed from that culture of don't feel. If we look at the characteristics of feminine energy being more around intuition, receiving, leaning back, sexuality, sensuality, being in your body, emotional intelligence, these sort of things, all of those characteristics in one way or another have been shunned, ostracized, and shamed over the last really forever, right? Think about how women's sexuality has been demonized or shamed or controlled, put down. Emotional intelligence, obviously. Intuition, right? We have a very hustle-based, logic-based culture. Our culture celebrates masculine qualities so much. And, if you go into... My sister is amazing. Let me divulge into a story. And she works HR, and she's super successful. And she said this brilliant thing in one of her interviews about being a woman in leadership role, because she's scaled so quickly. And they asked her a question about, what advice would you give? I'm going to paraphrase. I hope she doesn't hate me for this, but what advice would you give to people, essentially who want to succeed in this career, right? And she had said something along the lines of, your emotions are a superpower, right? Your intuition, your empathy, this is a superpower. She really celebrated emotional intelligence in a world that is very masculinized. Such a hard word to say.
Yeah.
Where people usually say logic trumps emotion. And I just love her so much for that. And so we're still very much in that culture in the corporate world, which neither Courtney or I are in because we work for ourselves. Masculinity is really celebrated in terms of achieving, hustle, get it done, perform. And it's time to integrate because there's magic and magnetism in the feminine energy as well that everyone has. And how much more powerful would these amazing men be if they were integrated with their feminine? And how much more powerful would these women be if they were integrated with their feminine?
100%.
Yeah.
I get chills when we talk about that. But I wanted to point back because from what I've heard about your dad, that's how he spoke to you guys and how he speaks to himself, right? That your feelings are your superpower.
Yeah, to a degree. I mean, my parents did a good job, and there were things.
Sure.
As any parent, right? I'm like, I wish that had been a little bit different, but my dad was always present for my emotions. He knew how to be with my emotions really well. So it was lovely.
Amazing.
Yeah. So good.
Anything else on the men's side of things that you remember hearing from the stitches?
In terms of what the pitfalls are. Yeah. Does anything come to you?
Well, yes, something that came up over and over again was like, this is why they seek solitude or why they seek community with people who understand and will not push them out of that reality. That feels very comforting for them. And so I think that is worth mentioning because that's the direct downstream effect is if emotions are not safe or they're going to be manipulative or used against me, then therefore I'm just going to pull away completely. And that's kind of the stereotypical dynamic that we expect or have created in the dating culture. I would say that that's starting to turn around where more emotionally available men are in the dating scene. But even like 10 years ago, that was the running joke that like men just don't talk about their emotions.
Yeah, now again, the culture's shifting now, right? Women are asking for emotional intimacy, and it's a bar for a lot of women. It's like, here's where I want you to meet me. Yeah.
Yeah, because at some point, it's Alison Armstrong always says, I would rather be alone than not have this need met on a consistent basis.
Don't you think a lot of that too has to do with, women, it used to be this relationship of like provider, and then they would be the provider, right? And she would introduce this other emotional component. But now women have their own careers and provide for themselves, and so they are looking for a new level of relationship where emotional intimacy is there. You know, they don't, they're not just looking for a home or money or whatever those things that it might have been 100 years ago. They're looking for a high level partnership.
Yeah. This is what you're providing.
Emotional intimacy and connection with a partner, 10 out of 10. Meeting a man that can go there is like incredible.
Yeah. So good. There was something else that was coming up that men were saying often that I'm trying to think.
There were lots of things.
There were lots. There were so many, and we're not doing it justice at all for the amount of content that was provided to us.
Well, here's the thing. We are going to give it all to you in a beautiful packaged way that you can interact with. So if we're being honest, Courtney and I are kind of like, what can we share on the podcast publicly? And then what needs to be shared in a format where it's structured and people are invested and will follow the whole plot versus 60 seconds on a TikTok or a 30-minute podcast.
Right. Yeah, where we can have a little bit of like guidance and mentorship so that you can apply it in a way that feels right.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. Yeah, then I guess it'll come back if it's meant to come back. It was something that was kind of like, oh, I hadn't thought about that. So.
There were lots of things that men had said. The biggest, I felt like, was the masculinity piece and it being weaponized or used against them at some point.
Yeah.
I feel like I want to tell them about the thing that we're making. It just feels natural.
Do it. Say it.
Courtney and I have created a masterclass for you on how to create more emotional intimacy with your partner. And we've created one directed for women who date men to support their men in opening up, in sharing about how they feel and creating that emotional intimacy with them. And then we've created one for men as well, the counterpart too. So there'll be 2 different classes, and we hope that you'll take both with your partner. We are going to give you a little discount if you decide to take both. Maybe like a little buy one, get one 50% off or something. Yeah. We haven't really talked about it. But it's going to be so juicy. And we're going to share with you all these pitfalls that came up in terms of why men don't share their emotions or open up, and what we know from our expertise, education, experience, the skill sets we can give you as women to learn to cultivate that safety in the relationship for them to keep opening and have that emotional intimacy. And then the reverse as well, right? For men to learn how to hold space, how to listen, how to validate, reassure, all these things that are so important. I mean, we're talking even down to some scripts you can try on, because we recognize how foreign this can feel. Yeah. And how people get triggered. They say something that triggers you, and then you're triggered, they're triggered, and you're both triggered. It's just a triggered mess. And you feel like you can't back out, and both people are getting more wounded, and it's like, I don't know what to do. So we want to give you a skill set and a framework to feel supported, tools that you can use, ways to help you regulate your nervous system in those moments. I mean, this is going to be juicy, and our TikTok family pre-paved the way, but it really just became a gateway for us to go, let's pull our skill sets out of the bag and create this for people. Yes.
I love that. We've been wanting to build something like this because it's so the connection between the emotional intimacy and the intimacy as a whole of the relationship. Emotions, physical, sexual, all of those things working together. Communication is the undercurrent. Has to be there. And if we can give you that skill set, that would be such a gift.
An incredible gift.
Yeah.
And a gift to generations going forward.
Oh my gosh.
Oh my God.
Wow.
So we've got that coming out, and we will put the links in the show notes for you to check out dates, times, purchase, save your spot. Obviously, you'll get lifetime access to the material, so you can watch and rewatch. And I would encourage you to watch both.
Yeah.
No matter if you are the masculine or the feminine pole. I would encourage you to go to both, actually.
Yeah.
Either way, it's nice to see the flip side.
Because we both have masculine and feminine energy. And when we're talking about emotional intimacy, one is in one and one is in the other at all times. I mean, there will be kind of like a coming together and distance thing that creates that kind of sticky tension. But to know how the feminine is feeling and being received also gives you language, men, for how you're interacting with your own feminine energy, what your feminine energy may be needing, so that you can ask for it, especially because this might be very foreign. Same thing for the women, how you can be the container and be in your masculine energy and like holding the space so that that interchange can happen.
Which is required, right? There's a lot of polarity teaching that's like, you stay in your masculine, you stay in your feminine. And in my experience, that doesn't create the most healthy dynamic. You're going to flip-flop sometimes. If my partner is having emotions, I'm not going to say, sorry, not my job.
Yeah.
I'm not going to hold space. No, this is emotional intimacy. This is, you'll flip for a moment, and it's beautiful, and it will build your bond in the term that you had sent me, sacred union.
Yeah.
Right? It's a sacred union. It's not so much about polarity in that moment. It's about building a loving connection. Yeah. So that's an art as well. And then how to flip right back into your spaces. So you both feel more like yourselves again, you know?
Yeah. More natural. Love it.
So we've got that coming out. I do feel like we owe the women more of a nod here.
I agree.
Yeah. Take it away. What is the pitfall for emotional
redirect.
Intimacy around women?
Ooh, I would say the socialization that creates this wound for women, we'll talk about the wound, based on the socialization, ends up being either that they feel like they're too much in their emotions. And this will come from when you have an expression of emotion that maybe a parent or an authority figure can't tolerate because of their own nervous system regulation or limitations in that skill set. We take that as a reflection of us, that now this emotional expression is bad or should be shamed, or we should shut it down, we should repress it, I'm going to be too much. It ends up coming out kind of sideways in my experience, but that's definitely one that I have had to work through for sure, of kind of like letting it out is sometimes really difficult, even in safe spaces. It's kind of a corrective process to let the emotion, the authentic emotion out, not the like polished version of it, the perfect feeling message, or the like the kind of not quite as direct emotion, to just be like, I feel angry. Which also kind of leads into needing to please the other person. Women are repeatedly socialized to be pleasing, and we're just going to call it what it is, because that's kind of the experience that most women have had, where we're celebrated for being more pleasing, and therefore if we have to tone down our own emotional needs, if we have to repress some of our own experience, or if we need to prioritize someone else's experience at the cost of our own, we are celebrated for that. It's seen as a really selfless thing, or a really sweet or kind or good thing, and then it's rewarded. But what that's teaching us is that my authentic expression is going to hurt someone, so of course I'm never going to express it, and or it's going to be too much. Is there anything I missed with that? Did you have any other thoughts on
Genius. And I think the men listening are going to relate to this, and I just want to highlight the reason is we're just talking about the feminine energy in any of us, right? It's just the feminine in all of us. So you may have a voice in your head too, men, that says, I want to tell her, but I'm going to be too much. You know, the same way we go through it, or I'm feeling really this way, but I'm just going to shove it down. It's our relationship to feminine energy. It's really what's happening. Yeah.
Wow.
Is there more around your experience or what you've noticed with your clients, their relationship to emotions, and kind of what keeps them from emotional intimacy with themselves or someone else?
Ooh. Well, it does start, like I said at the beginning, it starts internally.
Yes.
First. Because I know that the parts of me that I have not quite witnessed, or that still trigger me, I'm not I'm not ready to reveal that. That would feel like a huge leap.
Yeah.
So the more that I am able to be with the experience, just the raw emotion and the raw energy, the more I can feel grounded in myself first when I reveal that to someone else. It's not that I won't reveal it to someone else, but I have found through my experience that it ends up being kind of like a it's not quite received the way that I need for it to be that raw. And when I have witnessed myself, and the same thing with clients too, a lot of times they have these old patterns and old stories of not feeling comfortable or feeling welcomed in revealing more of their emotional self. A lot of times it will come in stories of parents just needing them to, and probably well-meaning, like, let's just get in the car. I can't deal with this right now. And those little moments that kind of like sear in our mind of like, okay, I'm never doing that again. We have to go in and kind of like clean that up and give that part a voice when we're no longer triggered by it. Once we can accept that part of ourself, we can reveal it with other people, and that's what creates healthy emotional intimacy. The parts of us that we have a hard time accepting are going to be a lot harder to share as well, because it's going to require either a lot more safety and trust, like a longer term container, or some awareness around, hey, this feels really vulnerable for me.
Genius. You brought up such a good point that I need to highlight.
Oh, great.
You triggered such a good point. The point is that there is an art to sharing what's on your heart and how you feel. And sometimes when we don't have the skill set for how to share, we can set other people up to fail because we just kind of blob, and then we go, here, you take this, you fix it, you hold it, which is a really different experience than me coming to my masculine partner, having felt the things, and that they're still raw. Don't get me wrong. Like, they're still wobbly and raw. Wobbly and raw. And I might cry through the whole thing, but I've sat with myself enough to be able to hold myself through sharing it, and also not to put it on him, like, take it, fix it, right? And I know how to set him up to win and let him know what I might need, etc. All the things we're going to teach you in the masterclass. But there's a skill set to this, and I'm just going to call this out to you. We got a lot of responses from men, from them saying that they shared and then they weren't met by their women, or they were dropped, or the women hijacked them with their emotions. That was the biggest thing.
Yes, that was it. Thank you.
Emotional hijacking. Like, he would share something and she would make it about her, which is a skill set for women to learn too. But there's skill sets on both sides. Men also need to learn how to share. And again, men and women need to learn how to share. And you can't blame yourself, because most of us have grown up, as we've talked about for the last half an hour, in households where it wasn't even safe to share. So we don't even know how to get that skill set, right?
Yeah, zero practice.
None. So there's no shame at all. But if you have that skill set of, here's how I'm feeling, here's what I need, you can create such a smoother process. There are ways to make this easier on yourself. And then there's a skill set in how to receive it, in how to hold space, to validate, to reassure, all these things. It is hard.
Which is something, was that thought complete?
That is it. Okay.
Which is something that we've talked about before. I'm thinking of that episode about creating safety. Like, we talk about validating emotions, reflecting, holding space. Like, if you have been wondering what the heck that means in actuality and practice, we got you. This is what we are wanting to teach, because we can say these words all the time, like, oh, just hold some space, just be more in your feminine, reveal your heart. Like, these things that have
your feelings.
They have context around them. They're not just like phrases. We've named them that because that, for us, communicates this entire global awareness and skill set. And that is what we want to be teaching. So we're super excited for that. So if you've had any questions about what we're talking about when we say creating emotional safety, holding space, validating emotions, revealing your heart, all of those things, we are going to deep dive and give you that skill set so that you can do those things with more ease.
And come with your vulnerability, come with your wobbles, come with not knowing how to do it. That's what we've created the class for. Yep. You're not supposed to come with a huge skill set. And I'm telling you right now, I have learned the hard way. There's a reason I feel confident at it now, and that is I messed it up countless times. So you're allowed to be vulnerable and imperfect and human in this container, always with us. But we know this is a hard one.
Yeah.
We've got your back. We're in it with you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I love that, because I think just having a safe space, in my experience, to have the conversation that was not allowed to be had gives you automatically a leg up on learning the skills.
Mm-hmm.
Like, let's get close enough to these emotions so that we can start talking about them in a way that changes our relationship to them, how we've been relating to them.
Yeah.
And now we have some skill set too, so that we can feel confident. The closer we get to them, we feel more confident instead of more wobbly.
And it's just a feeling.
And
I mean, I could go on and on about this.
Mm-hmm.
And I work with women so much on this all the time too. So it's not like men or women supersede each other in general. None of us got this skill set.
Yeah.
And I think the most helpful thing going forward after listening to this episode would be, well, two things. For you to explore how you on your own relate to your own emotions. What happens for you when you have an emotional experience, right? When you feel sad, when you feel angry, when you feel frustrated, what happens in your body? Are you sitting with it like, oh, this is a thing?
Mm-hmm.
Or are you saying, don't feel that? Are you saying, this happens a lot in the spiritual community, just be high vibe? No, be happy. Just be happy. There's so many reasons to be happy. It's like, yes, and your emotions are valid.
Yeah.
You know, there's a lot of avoidance. So what is your personal experience with the emotions? What stories come up? How are you judging yourself? What are you making it mean about you? I'm too much. I'm overwhelming him, or she's going to think less of me. She's going to think I'm weak. What if she weaponizes this against me? Don't make them wrong. Change them. Just notice them as some foreplay to the masterclass.
Ooh.
And then maybe start noticing too, interpersonally, how is your personal relationship to your feminine and to your emotions translating in your relationship? Is it causing issues? Is it causing lack of intimacy? Is it causing lack of connections? When your partner shares, what do you notice in you? Courtney says this, we say this all the time, but I feel like we talk about this. You say this almost every time we talk.
Great.
That your relationship to your woman and her, for example, your woman and her emotions is going to mirror men, your internal relationship to your own emotions. And women, your relationship to your man will mirror your internal relationship to your masculine energy.
Yep. Oh, yes.
So notice those things in partnership. And if you're in partnership, send them this episode. I highly recommend talk about it.
Yeah.
Just start going, hey, this came up for me. What do you think? How were you socialized? What did your parents do? Let's open up the dialogue.
Yeah.
I swear to you, this is how we heal the world.
Right.
That and better sex.
And this can lead to better sex
Which
too.
we will give you episodes on in the future.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, figuring out like what you bring to the table. What was normal for me growing up? What was normal for you growing up around emotions? Like, how did this relationship get started? Both of you are bringing all of that tension into this relationship and expecting to not talk about it is...
Don't do that to yourselves,
No,
you sillies.
that's crazy making. That's
Yes.
crazy making.
Yes, not baby making. Not where you want to be.
We're going to move you from crazy making to baby making
Amen.
energy.
Yes.
Like, ooh, maybe that's going to be the masterclass.
Crazy making to baby making. Hilarious.
It's a vibe. Okay, other than the masterclass, anything else that you want to share about this?
Oh, about what we've got going on here?
Yeah.
I would just say we'll live and die on the hill that empowered energies are integrated energies.
Yep.
So it's not about being all masculine, all feminine. It's about the integration of both. Mm-hmm. And it's probably not going to be a half and half situation. You might be predominantly one or the other. Mm-hmm. That's where polarity comes from. Mm-hmm. But you got to have both online to be the best, most healthy, whole, human version of you. And disowning your emotions, your intuition, your sexuality, or for women, disowning your drive, your hustle, your ambition, your boundaries, your initiative taking, your leadership. Both of those are going to cause pain because you are a whole person with both of these energies alive inside of you. And I just, my wish for you is that you embrace both.
I love that.
So anything else for you?
No, I love that. I think that's going to be a gorgeous masterclass. We're super excited about it. Check the show notes for the dates.
Yes.
We will keep you posted on that. What else do you have coming up for them? Anything that you particularly... I'm like silver platter here. This is gold, you guys.
Yes,
She's got some juice.
Juice is the right word.
That is pun intended.
Thank you for that layup. Yes, I have a program, the Pleasure Path program for vulva owners. sorry men, this is only for vulva owners right now, because we have some wounding to heal around pleasure for women, probably for men too, but my focus right now is women, in helping women reclaim their pleasure and their sensuality and their sexuality and really reconnect to their bodies again. So we are doing everything from falling in love with your pussy, your body, communicating your wants and needs, understanding what makes the most fulfilling sex, which, by the way, is not about technique. It's not a technique thing at all. How to have those needs met, how to communicate those needs, and then how to play with even some more things as you get more comfortable in your body, things like squirting, like becoming multi-orgasmic, all of those fun and juicy things. So this is really a container for women to reclaim their pleasure, get back in their bodies, integrate this part of themselves again, and heal any part that's shaming it, that's making it bad, that is making it dirty, that makes it less godly, spiritual, whatever. This is your place to come in and heal that, and then explore what pleasure in your body is like and what pleasure with your partner can be like when you, as a woman, as the vulva owner, learn your own body and how to bring all of you to the table. Oh my gosh, does it just explode. It's the perfect pun intended. So if you want to join that, there's a link in the show notes. I can't remember when this will air, but it's starting in October. So I hope that you'll join us. It's going to be so juicy.
Love it. And I can say, I've taken several of your courses, and I can say that you are really good at walking people up to something that had been really like scary or ambiguous in a non-judgmental, such a like friend, big sister energy, that it just feels so normal. Again, we're just having the conversations that may not have been had at this point in our life. That's what we're doing. We're filling in the gaps. There's nothing like special about it. Is special, but there's nothing that's like earth-shattering about taboo. What you're going to be talking about, and yet we haven't had the conversation. And so you are so good at leading people in all different conversations, but particularly this is your zone of genius.
Thank you.
Supporting you, sister.
It's going to be so good. But Courtney, you've got magic for people.
Yeah.
Tell them your magic.
I'm really excited. So by the time this airs, I am actually going to be launching again my program Nourished. Yay. Which is, I'm super excited about it because I have been reformulating it based on 2 years now of feedback, and I have restructured it, rebranded it, and it is my best thus far. It's the best I've created thus far. It really is intended, kind of like you do with sexuality. Mine is around emotional eating and sweets and that emotional eating pattern that people have. Again, we aren't taught how to fuel, how to move, how to operate, how to care for these bodies that we grew up in. And so we just need some clarification, and I love providing that clarification to women. So the show notes will have that. And always, I love leading people through Arise. My favorite program is still Arise, but right now Nourished is pretty hot. So check out the show notes for those two pieces if you're looking for some kind of reparenting of yourself in those ways. I so enjoy having those conversations in hopefully a neutral way too.
Courtney's a dietitian.
Yes, I'm a dietitian. That is
like what in the always so low-key about it. Well, we were having a conversation earlier. I was telling about these probiotics I love, and she was like, yeah, it only takes 2 days before your gut is like a whole new gut. And I was like, what? She's like, yeah, it really only takes 2 days. I was like, I swear sometimes I forget how brilliant you are with nutrition. So
thank you.
Take that course.
Thank you.
And also, if you're lucky enough to be her friend, you will get lots of snacks and treats. And they're delicious.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm super excited about it because this one is the blending of science and feminine energy when it comes to nutrition. It's the best of both sides of my brain, and I think it's gold. So
nobody else doing it.
Yeah, check it out.
So good.
Awesome. If you loved this episode, share it with your significant other. This is our privilege to share information so that we can be the facilitator of the conversation that might be awkward for you to bring up. So here we are, silver platter for you.
Play it in the car.
Oh.
On a trip. Play when you're in the shower and they're in the house. Play when you're cooking dinner and they're just there.
Trap them in a car on a trip where you're the DJ. No, just send it to them.
Or just be about them. Yeah, or that. Sorry, better advice comes from Courtney. just send it to them.
Yeah. All right. We love you guys. We'll catch you next time.
See you later.